Hello everyone. Today we embark on a journey through the complexities of Abraham Lincoln's evolving views on race and equality, exploring pivotal moments from his early encounters to the historic policies that reshaped a nation. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, is a historical figure who has left an amazing mark on American history. His leadership during one of America's most tumultuous periods and his instrumental role in ending slavery had made him a symbol of freedom and justice. However, Lincoln's journey towards these accomplishments was not one of unwavering conviction, but rather a complex thought process that evolved over time. At the heart of this process were his views on race and equality. We will begin by exploring his early experience with African Americans while working on a river flatboat, seeing the cruelties they endured, and how reading anti-slavery poems and listening to the sermons of pastors taught him the wrongs of slavery. We will then delve into Lincoln's differing views with known abolitionists and his pro-views on colonization. Continuing, we will look into some of Lincoln's most famous speeches and accomplishments and how his views on race and equality can be seen in each of them, finishing off with one of the biggest what-ifs in history. How would Lincoln have gone about reconstructing the country if he had never been killed? The book Abraham Lincoln in White America by Brian R. Dirk went into detail on Lincoln's experience with African Americans in his early life, with Dirk stating, "Some believe that two ministers exerted a powerful influence on Lincoln's thinking about slavery while he was still a child. Even before Abraham could read or write, he learned of the wrongs of slavery by listening to these men of God." End quote. Also stating in the book, he likely read a poem by Englishman William Cowper criticizing the British Empire's complicity in the slave system. He also read in the Kentucky Preceptor two selections of anti-slavery sentiment, The Desperate Negro and The Liberty in Slavery, both of which offered passionate arguments against the injustice of human bondage. End quote. Lincoln's early exposure to anti-slavery sentiments from church leaders in literature such as William Cowper's poem, criticizing the British Empire's involvement in the slave system, planted the seeds of moral opposition to slavery. Lincoln's first encounter with African Americans occurred when he went to work on a river flatboat, where he got to see firsthand the hardships of a slave's life. Brian Dirk wrote, "Life for a slave on the sugar coast was cruel. Black men were sent into the swamps to collect fuel for the sugar boiling fires, which necessarily exposed them to malaria, yellow fever, and other deadly diseases." End quote. Lincoln's early encounters with the stark realities of slavery contributed to a complex understanding that would continue to evolve throughout his life. This would influence his role in shaping the nation's trajectory toward equality and justice. Abolitionists were individuals who advocated for the complete and immediate abolition of slavery in the United States. In an article titled, "I Will Be Heard," written at Cornell University, it mentions, abolitionists believed that slavery was a national sin, and that it was the moral obligation of every American to help eradicate it from the American landscape by gradually freeing the slaves and returning them to Africa. Now, Lincoln did show heavy support for the idea of colonization, which aligns with an abolitionist view. However, in the book by Fred Kaplan, Lincoln and the Abolitionists, John Quincy Adams' Slavery and the Civil War, it states, for abolitionists such as Wendell Phillips, William Lloyd Garrison, Frederick Douglass, Lincoln's journey toward the place they had long occupied seemed painfully slow. White America had no desire to shed blood or pay money to emancipate slaves. Lincoln had to find ways halting, difficult, and indirect as they were, to take white America down the road of what became total war and eventual total emancipation. End quote. Now, Lincoln did not agree with abolitionists with the total emancipation of slaves. He was cautious and pragmatic, considering the political and social realities of the time. Lincoln's slow pace towards emancipation proved to be successful with the passing of the 13th Amendment in 1865. Colonization is taking control of an area or a country that is not your own, especially using force and sending people from your own country to live there. A quote from George Frederickson about Lincoln's colonization views states, "In his opinion, newly freed bondsmen whose intellects are clouded by slavery needed the direction of blacks capable of thinking as white men, because they had not been systematically oppressed." The address to the Negro deputation stands as the classic statement of Lincoln's quasi-racism, because it has simultaneously denied black equality as practical option for American society, while affirming it is a theoretical possibility in another place and under other circumstances. The quote suggests that according to Lincoln, the theoretical possibility of black equality exists in another place. This notion aligns with the colonization movement's central idea that relocating freed blacks to a different environment away from the United States could lead to the betterment and potential equality. The colonization plan could have been viewed as a compromise that aimed to address both the issue of slavery and the concerns of those who were uncomfortable with the idea of immediate integration. By proposing colonization, Lincoln might have hoped to build a bridge between these two opposing views. Now, one of Lincoln's most famous speeches, the House Divided speech, emphasized the urgent need for unity in a nation divided by the issue of slavery. Lincoln warned that a house divided against itself cannot stand, and expressed his belief that a nation cannot thrive if it is fundamentally divided. While he did not explicitly address racial equality in this speech, it laid the foundation for his subsequent actions. The Emancipation Proclamation issued on January 1, 1863's primary goal was to suppress the rebellion by depriving the Confederate States of their slave labor force. Lincoln's language and intentions reflected a nuanced perspective on equality. In the proclamation, Lincoln declared that all persons held as slaves within said designated states and parts of states are and henceforward shall be free. This statement reflects a commitment to the principle of freedom for those who had been enslaved. Moreover, Lincoln's call for the freed individuals to abstain from all violence and his recommendation that they labor faithfully for reasonable wages underscore a vision of equality and self-sufficiency. This act led to one of the most important amendments ever to be passed in the United States. The 13th Amendment states, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction." The passage of the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution in 1865, which explicitly abolished slavery, reflects Abraham Lincoln's commitment to the principles of equality and justice. While the amendment did not immediately secure full civil rights for African Americans, it laid the groundwork for moving the nation closer together. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, delivered on November 19th of 1863, reflects his profound commitment to the principles of equality and the sacrifices made during the Civil War. In the opening lines, Lincoln refers to the founding of the nation, emphasizing the idea that it was conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Furthermore, Lincoln acknowledges the ongoing Civil War as a test of whether a nation founded on such principles can endure. The phrase "a new birth of freedom" in the concluding remarks signifies Lincoln's vision for a nation's future, a future where the sacrifices of those who fought and died in the war can lead to a renewed dedication to the principles of equality. While Lincoln's views on race were complex and evolved over time, the Gettysburg Address exemplifies his commitment to the United Nations striving for freedom and equality for all of its citizens. In Lincoln's second inaugural address, delivered in the midst of the Civil War, Lincoln called for unity, reconciliation, and healing. He states, "With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God give us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds." Lincoln's language and approach hints at his vision for a just and a compassionate post-war era, one in which the nation could move towards equality and healing quickly. Obviously, Lincoln did not get to see the reconstruction of the United States post-war. However, let's consider this. If Lincoln had lived to see the completion of Reconstruction, it is likely that his approach would have continued to prioritize a lenient and inclusive path to reunification. Lincoln's emphasis on reconciliation and the rapid restoration of the Southern states to the Union might have persisted. This can be seen with Lincoln's 10% plan. The basis of the plan was a Southern state could be readmitted to the Union if at least 10% of its voters took an oath of allegiance to the Union and pledged to abide by the Emancipation Proclamation. Once the 10% threshold was met, the state could form a new government and draft a new constitution. This constitution had to abolish slavery, demonstrating a commitment to the Union's principles. The free labor plan is associated with the abolitionist movement in the 19th century. It believed in providing African Americans economic opportunities to work for themselves, own property, and provide educational opportunities to enhance their skills and contribute more effectively to society. Hypothetically, let's consider the following. Lincoln does not get assassinated. He enacts his 10% plan, and Lincoln's free labor plan is also enacted. Now, the free labor plan would lead to African Americans receiving educational opportunities, owning property, and getting paid for their work. However, I don't think Lincoln would take in the fact that the South would be so willing to accept this. Yeah, slaves are free now, and they can own property and earn money, but the views of the people in the South would not just go away overnight. The majority of the Southern population are going to treat the African Americans poorly due to the fact that they just lost out on their free labor. So let's tweak the idea of colonization. Instead of putting the slaves into a whole new country, reintegrate the African Americans into states that are more accepting of them and were against slavery. Give the African Americans a choice if they want to stay in the South, or if they would want to relocate to another part of the United States. Does this solve every problem? No. However, I believe Abraham Lincoln would just want to keep the peace between everybody. Concluding our journey, I want you to remember Abraham Lincoln not just as a historical figure, but is a symbol of the ongoing quest for justice and inclusion. A leader whose legacy challenges us to continue striving for a more equitable and united future. Thank you.